Chapter 5 in the cruise industry. So, relatively speaking, this is an industry that has been around for quite some time, but the facets of it that we talk about, usually in classes, is relatively new. So, you see the early uses for travel by water, and, as early as 1844 we had the recognition of it. 1867 it starts to come about in a more organized fashion, and then the early 1900s, and we have that shift from World War I. We start packaging stuff together as early as the 1950s. So that's why I say, relatively speaking, it's still fairly new. The growth in the past decade plus, that's kind of been this renaissance for the cruising industry and the amount of people that enjoy this as a form of entertainment and vacations, etc., etc. So, and as we see from the new ships, that they are basically these just monstrosities in the water, and with technology and construction, what they're able to do now has kind of taken these floating resort type feel. So, and it's still a small percentage has been tapped. As of now, the way that it exists, these would be your top 3 players. And we'll talk a little bit about those, because it's important to know that each kind of has their own type of market that they're going for. And as we know from many classes that you've taken, nothing fits perfectly in a box, but this gives you kind of an idea as to what you can kind of expect. So start with Carnival. A fifth of the sales, and relatively speaking, a pretty low target audience. And as you can imagine, if you've ever taken a cruise, you know this to be true, that a lot of that revenue comes from beverages. And I don't need to go into any more detail than that, but you get it if you've ever been on a cruise, which is why you get your bill at the end and your eyes want to pop out of your head. You can see here, under the umbrella, some of the different cruise lines that they operate that maybe you have been part of and maybe didn't even realize you were sailing under that flag, so to speak. So Royal Caribbean wants to take it a step further, and it's not to say that Carnival doesn't welcome families, but it's very important to understand from a market standpoint, from a client standpoint, of what you are good at, what your perception is. So if Carnival is younger and it's not perceived to be something where you're going to see a lot of families, and that's the kind of cruise you want to take, then that's probably going to be the boat you may take, so to speak. Caribbean goes a little bit older with a little bit more money, and has those 2 different types. When you look at those 2 different types of brands within the segment, you can see those are trying to cater to 2 distinctly different types of consumers, and that makes sense. And then you go to Norwegian, freestyle cruising, and where they operate. So, so that's a really nice generic start to it, definition, if you will, of the 3 players. So when we talk about this market, just from looking at those 3, you can see that it's a very wide market. So when we take this nice generic definition of the cruise market, then we look at this. Well, we also know that, just based on what we heard from Carnival and based on some of the other things you may know from personal experience, that nobody fits perfectly inside there, and that we may have some folks that are that want to go with their families, that want to go with their kids. That's when we see this expansion of the market. We see these different kinds of boats that are being created to assist with these different types of clients. So, less than 7 days, the brand loyalty. Remember, when it comes to business, that it's much cheaper and much easier to keep business than it is to go out and seek new business. So if they're brand loyal, our best efforts should be why. What is it about our cruise line that makes them want to stay with us, right? And then we kind of look at beyond that, mass and middle. Let's just take those first two. So now we can get a little bit more specific in the type of marketing that we want to do based on income and the costs that they're going to want to pay daily. Just at these two, you could see some variance there. So how do you market to someone who is in the middle market, and what cruise line do you think best suits them? What type of cruise best suits them? What package is better suited to offer to them? And then when you look at this and you see how much they can spend, and believe me when I tell you it can get a lot more expensive than that, what is that market like? And how do we make sure we're reaching the customers in that specific market? When we look at types, regional is, and anybody who is in our area right now taking this class in South Florida, we see a lot of this, right? Coastal, again, close to land. A lot of that is done here on a smaller scale. But we're big in our area at that regional cruise market. Excuse me. And then river, the feel is different. The feel of the cabins are different, right? And the meals are a little bit better. It doesn't seem to feel as mass-produced, if you will, as some of the other big ones do, which again is not knocking them. It's just perception. And then river cruises, we talked about that a little bit with some of the companies that fall under the umbrellas of, like, Carnival and stuff that specialize in river cruises. And then steamboats and barges, again, it is a unique thing. The Mississippi River cruise on a steamboat, as an example, you sit there and say, and how popular can that be? It's a very lucrative market, and there's definitely a specific type of customer that wants to experience that, and I guess it's a great way to sell a cultural experience and a historical experience while you're on a boat. We're seeing more and more of this natural cruising, exotic places. The more the better, and then less traveled places like Alaska, which only sails for a specific period of time, and it seems to be that those cruises fill up and don't have a problem making money. And that's one thing to note. The goal is to have a full boat, period. So a lot of times if you wait till almost right before, if there's spaces, you might be able to get a better deal because that boat doesn't want to leave a port of call with an empty cabin. That's lost revenue. Sail, no rigid structure. Again, 3 to 6 month world cruise. I don't think we need to say that that's expensive. I think you could pretty much figure out that that's expensive, and it is. But, again, there's a market. So we go a little bit further with crossings, and that could be a very unique trip. The specialty themes are something that, again, I would say not that long ago, relatively speaking, were a novelty, and now you can take a band, a series of bands, a theme, a TV show, and you can sell at a cruise ship for you to cruise with certain celebrities, term being used loosely, and that's a specialty cruise. That market has increased quite a bit. And then, as we said before, some of these deluxe cruise liners, you're on a floating resort, and all the amenities and activities that you would find on land are now floating on the water. And it's done up to a different level, and it's almost at this point like, how can the next ship outdo the previous ship? So it happens. When we talk about an organizational standpoint, it is very much like a hotel with some exceptions. Obviously, the captain is an exception, but then you look at, the hotel manager, very similar to a hotel manager on dry land, if you will. So all the things that they're responsible for, the captain above everybody else, and again, staff captains from a administrative standpoint, F&B. The F&B on a cruise ship is extremely lucrative. And so, but also within it, just like at a resort or any other place, just all the different types of food and food service that you're responsible for is quite a bit. And cruise directors, all the onboard entertainment. I have a friend who's written a book who's a cruise director, and he's got some great stories to tell about that job and how, you're essentially a big face for that boat while the boat's going on. And people will look for you to answer questions. Many directly related to what you do, and a lot not so much, but they're still going to find you and ask you. So that's part of the fun of being a cruise director, I guess I could say. As far as destinations go, Caribbean, most of you down here probably know a little bit about those cruises. Very popular. The eastern ones, especially for folks in South Florida, because of access and because of, for lack of a better word, affordability. Mediterranean cruises, very popular, very beautiful. We talked about Alaska a little bit, and we go back, like we said, just in the summer months. And it's a funny thing I tell people all the time that I have met a handful of people that have ever told me they haven't enjoyed an Alaskan cruise. Most people love it. Most people go back more than once, which is exactly what you want. Okay, Hawaii makes sense. These trends that we've talked about in all our other industries, it's no different than in the cruise industry, where we're looking at sustainable cruising and the things that are in place to try to make it greener, and the fact that this is now something that you can market, and supporting local cultures and conserving, protecting the built environment, if you will, all these things that go into it. Some trends that we talk about is the expansion of cruise ships, trying to outdo each other, like I said, features and entertainment, increasing ports, and and expanding passengers, and again, that going green and those opportunities. If you are a young person and you are very flexible, this is a great opportunity for you from a career standpoint, knowing that you're going to spend a lot of time on that boat, but also knowing that you might get to see some really, really cool places as part of your job. So I can tell you that that's something worth exploring if you've ever considered it. It's definitely an up-and-coming industry that, we have a couple new players coming into the market, and it seems to be growing, and it looks to be growing for the foreseeable future. So something to think about.